What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of our podcast. I'm Niall.
And I'm Austin.
And we are so sorry. So this week, I've got something a little more
serious
to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been doing a lot of reflection and really trying to understand the way that I'm perceiving my life and circumstances and things like that. Yeah.
Speaking of that, I just want to add in real quick. As the podcast goes on, everybody will understand this a little bit more. Try not to laugh too hard. Now that's specifically towards Niall. Anyway,
I love a good laugh. I know what you're saying. Right. I have to cap myself today.
Uh-huh.
You naughty. You can't do that to me. Anyway, so yeah, we're being super serious today. And then we laugh. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So recently I found myself being a little bit pessimistic about a lot of things, I think is the word that I was using.
It was.
And I feel like that's something that people can relate to sometimes. I think we all go through a series of pessimism at points in our lives. And recently I can't catch a break for some reason. Something that has happened recently, literally as of yesterday, I had to go to the doctor, and it turns out that I most likely have a hernia, and I don't even know how that happened because
You're laughing too hard, man.
I'm either laughing too hard, or I, picked up something heavier than a stick, and I don't know how that happened. No, but I think the only thing that could have done it was I was helping my mom move about a month ago, and we were moving some things throughout the house. I'm always really methodical with how I pick things up. Like, you never arch your back. You always keep your back straight and lift with your legs, not your spine and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I was doing anything super strenuous. I wasn't lifting anything on my own and stuff like that. So I really don't know. But anyway, it's an unfortunate circumstance. And there have just been a plethora of other things that have been happening recently. I'm trying to find a job right now, and that's been not as fruitful as I was hoping. And now that I have a hernia, if I can't find a certain job within a certain type of work sector, then there's not a lot of other jobs available to me because I can't lift anything. And that really makes me
Because if you push it too hard, you hurt yourself significantly worse than already.
And so now, I can't go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I can't run, and like you were joking, like I gotta watch myself. I can't really just like haphazardly laugh openly, like super hard. Like I wheeze all the time like a teapot, and like
that's
I gotta
something
be real
you're
careful.
known for, though. Is your laugh?
Yeah,
like, that's something that is very Niall-like. I would say it's your mark.
Right,
is your laugh?
Yeah, and so it's just been difficult for me to put a positive twist on a lot of things, especially this now, finding out that when you're recovering from a hernia, first of all, I won't be having an appointment for about a month from now. And then if it turns out that I have to have surgery, it'll probably be about another month from then. And then it's a 6-month recovery. That's about 6 to 8 months where I won't be able to do a lot of things. And it's very difficult for me to think of that in a positive way. And so it just got me thinking within the last couple of days, especially about, I feel like there are a lot of people that, like I said, go through a time period like that in their life. And now that I'm in one and that I'm recognizing it, I just thought that it would be something worthwhile to talk about and to just give some insight. You always think that things happen to you, but really things happen for you or just around you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that the universe or whatever circumstances that are against you are like recognizing you and being like, oh, they deserve these things to happen. Like, I don't think my intestinal tract or whatever was like, I'm just going to push myself through Niall's membrane in his stomach and give him a hernia. Like, I don't think that that happens like that. You know what I'm saying?
No.
And so, but it feels like that a lot of the time. Like it feels like everything is against you. And
I've been there.
Yeah. And so I'm just really trying to put a twist on this, like I'm saying, and it is difficult. And I think that a lot of people, when you're in that kind of pessimistic mindset, the last thing that you want to do is use energy that you already don't have to try to make something positive. You kind of just want to sulk and wallow in your situation because you want to feel bad for yourself or you want other people to feel bad for you.
That's actually a very good point, because that's something I was going to say here in a few minutes. Of course, I mean, I think of course I'm going to think it's a good point if that's something I was going to say.
Right. Austin only thinks good things.
Oh, always. Well, no, but it's easier. Honestly, it is easier to, let's say something gets you down. It is easier to sit and wallow in that pain, or in the sadness, or whatever it is, than it is to climb out of it, and than it is to try to look at the bright side of it. Like just whatever. I can't exactly think of an immediate example, but I mean, in any sense, it's like it's easier to just sit and think about how terrible this is, and how terrible, like, with your hernia or whatever, like, yeah, it's bad and it hurts, and it's something that, is causing your life to be a little thrown off a schedule, But at the same time, I mean, like you were talking about, the universe or whatever it is you believe, what controls things. Personally, I believe in God, but that's
right.
Yeah,
so, same thing, same concept.
yeah, and
applies,
it could have something to do with something that was meant to happen to you, something that's meant to be for your life. It could be, if you didn't get this hernia, okay, let's just say, and of course we don't actually know that you have one yet, because again, it can be like a month before they can even tell you.
There's something going on, but
yeah,
we just
there's
not 100%.
something going on, but like, let's say during this month, let's say it's not even that. Let's say like just something during this month, something would have harmed you, or something would have happened to you otherwise had this not happened to you. So had one thing not happened to you, another thing could have, and it could be someone or something trying to prevent that. So of course, I already just said what I believe. So I mean, I would think that that would be God trying to keep something from hurting you. Now, that's not always necessarily the case. Sometimes you just get a hernia, okay? Yeah. There's not always a deeper meaning, okay?
Right.
And it's like, and of course, we'll always talk about the deeper meanings and stuff like that, but it's like, I saw this meme several years ago about being in an English class, and actually I've had English teachers tell me this stuff before. Sometimes the curtain is just blue. An author is talking about, the window with blue curtains draping over it gave out this somber sound or whatever. And yeah, I mean, and yes, in that case, or in that one scenario, yes, it could have a deeper meaning, but sometimes a blue curtain is just a blue curtain.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, is like sometimes we'll call it a bodily malfunction. I mean, anything really. Right. Anything that happens to you, sometimes there's no deeper meaning. Sometimes things just happen. I mean, there's going to be some times when you're going to want to sit and think, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I can't do this, this, and this, and this. But at the same time, whenever I walked in here earlier, I noticed you were carrying around your Bible. So you were sitting and reading it. Yeah. So at that moment in time before I got here, you were sitting and reading. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not the Bible. I mean, it was in this case, but I mean, it could be anything. You were reading something. So you're expanding your knowledge. Mm-hmm. You are expanding your knowledge. You're expanding your faith. Whatever it is you're doing, you are doing things to benefit yourself that you might not otherwise do. Now, I know that you did to some extent before any of this happened, but now you have more time to focus on those kinds of things. Now you get to the point where there's not much else I can do. So, and again, I'm so sorry, because, that's something that I know some people will take offense to. Stuff like that, they'll be like, well, who are you to tell me, what this is going on in my life and why this is happening, or what I'm supposed to do during this time. I'm not trying to say that at all. What I'm trying to say is, in instances like this, you can take it as an opportunity.
Yes.
There are two ways to look at this. I mean, theoretically, yes, there's billions of ways, but there are two ways to look at any kind of situation, and I'm not even talking just specifically about yours. Any kind of situation. You can look at it positively or negatively. Mm-hmm. You can look at it like, okay, this may have just happened to me or around me or whatever. Here's what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to get myself back up, and I'm going to do this, and this, and you can follow through with it, and you can stay with it. There's also the negative aspect where you can say, okay, this just happened to me. Now I'm going to sit and wallow in it and not do anything to benefit my life. And I'm just going to be sad and remain sad for forever.
Right.
Just different things. I'm sorry, continue.
No, you're good.
I am so sorry.
I think that there is a good, I don't want to say medium between the two, but I think that sometimes, like, if you go through something traumatic, like a family member passes away, or you go through a breakup, or you're an athlete and you tear a muscle or break a bone or something like that, it is healthy, I think, to express the emotion of acknowledging that you're upset and taking
Absolutely.
the time to process that feeling, but wallowing in it and continuing to feel that way for an extended period of time is at some point is no longer doing you any good.
Yeah.
Like you can feel the emotion, and then at some point you need to do something to, move on. However,
That's perfect.
I feel as though that sometimes in life the circumstances outlast how long you should feel the emotion. So if a family member passes away and you take a week to grieve, well, a week later your family member's not coming back. So you have to like make the decision to be like, okay, to move on. And that's the difficult part, because a negative thought is always so much easier than a positive thought, in my opinion. I think it's so much easier to think negatively.
It is.
Because
that's what we were just talking about a minute ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that a lot of people do that a lot more often than they think, and it's a lot easier to recognize it happening in someone else than it is to recognize it within yourself, because that requires a lot of accountability to recognize.
We talked about this.
Yes.
Or a similar aspect of it about removing, before you remove the splinter from someone else's eye, remove the plank from yours first.
And that applies to a lot of things, whether it's you treating someone a certain way or trying to judge someone, or when it comes to just trying to look inwardly on your emotions or the way that you're perceiving things. Because I don't think that we're supposed to view life pessimistically all the time, because I think that takes away a lot of the glory and the positivity of what life is supposed to be.
Pessimistically, if you're looking at everything in the negative connotation and never in the positive light, you're not living life.
Right.
You're alive and you're thinking, but you're only thinking bad things, and you're like, okay, I'm just not going to do this because, and it's like with being scared with everything. I mean, there are some people who are scared to do certain things, and I understand to some extent. At that same time, if you're scared to do everything, then you're not really living. You're alive, but you're not living. And that's the kind of same way we're just talking about here. Like, pessimistically, okay, I'm sad, but I'm safe. And I feel like that's why it's so much easier to be pessimistic, is because it's safer in a sense. I mean, not in a literal sense, but in more like a physical sense or something like that. Being pessimistic and feeling bad for yourself and staying in one spot or whatever is safer than being optimistic and looking at the world as what it is and what it can be,
right?
And the opportunities that you have, and going and taking these opportunities, by the horns or whatever, as one may say. Because if you do stuff like that, it's a little bit riskier. It's like, I'm happy, but I'm not safe. Like, I'm happy, but I'm it's kind of dangerous for what I'm doing. But I'm living my life and I'm happy.
Right.
But being pessimistic, you can just kind of sit back, and this is completely off of what we were talking about earlier. Now that I'm thinking about it,
I think this is perfect.
I mean, I think it's good too. But like, we're talking about the same thing without talking about the same thing, because we originally talked about being pessimistic in one sense, about one, like how you may have a hernia, how you're a little bit pessimistic about it just because you can't do all the things that you once did. Now I'm talking about it more, and I feel like there's different, and this is what I was saying earlier, that there's countless possibilities, is somebody who just purposely looks at everything pessimistically, rather than, because you do still have optimism in your life. I mean, I noticed that whenever I walked in and you were already reading. Like, you were reading, you were optimistic about something, you were trying to benefit yourself while you can't go out and do things. And I also brought you some Twin Snakes, the candy.
Great candy.
Yes, they should sponsor us. Anyway.
Yeah, Twin Snakes, please sponsor us. I don't know what company you're owned by, but if you want to sponsor us with some Twin Snakes,
that would be fantastic.
That would be amazing.
That'd be so cool. Anyway,
yeah.
Yeah. Even just thinking about it, like, okay, well, after this is over, what's my game plan for after this is over?
Right.
Even that is a little bit optimistic.
It is, yeah.
And I'm sure you've already done some of those things, but at the same time, I understand the pessimistic side of it, just because I've been in situations similar to those. Now, I've never had a hernia or anything, but I have injured myself before, whether it be physically or even emotionally or mentally. I mean, you can get damaged that way. You can damage yourself that way, and that stuff is difficult to get through.
And I think something that we've talked about before, you made a lot of good points there, by the way.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
I talk a lot.
I like a lot about what you just said. And I think that something that we've talked about in the past is when I view a situation and I overthink or I think about it negatively, I try to justify taking the time to have those thoughts by thinking, if this comes true, then it was worth taking that time to worry about it. And so I just reinforce that negative thought. So, for example, if I worry about, actually, here's a perfect example.
Okay.
One time I was out with a friend and she wanted to take me on a ride down somewhere. And I was like, kind of hesitant about it. I was like, okay, fine. But I really don't feel like getting in a car accident today. And she was like, you've never even driven with me before. I don't drive like that. We'll be fine. And I was like, okay, but like I said, I really don't want to get in a car accident today. And so I get in the car and I was like, actually, I just remembered I don't have my wallet on me. It's in my car. So I have to get my wallet because if we get in a car accident, I want to have my ID. I mean, I'm like reinforcing all these things about not wanting to be in a car accident.
You were pessimistic as well as, what's the word I'm looking for? Not really anxious. You were kind of anxious about it in a way, but skeptical.
I was, skeptical. Yeah. And so we start driving and I kid you not, we had been in the car for about 60 seconds and we were crossing a couple lanes of traffic and someone hit us behind, like going down the road as we were crossing, kind of got almost T-boned, but farther towards the back of the car. I wasn't even phased. I just looked over it and I was like, did that just happen? And so when you have that kind of thinking and you worry about things and then they come true, you would reinforce the idea that, okay, now that I know that the things that I worry about actually come true, well, now it's worth it for me to worry about those things.
Yeah.
But then you only spend more time worrying about it. And most of the time, the things that you worry about don't come true.
Yep. And
so,
then the more times that they do come true, or actually, in all reality, even if it comes true one time, you're going to think it's going to be true every single time.
Yep.
And the more that you worry, the more you worry.
Yep. It compounds on itself exponentially. Yep.
And it just keeps going and going. And eventually you're just filled with all this worry. And I mean, I even remember, okay, and I'm going to go and apologize to you real quick because I noticed specifically around then, you started becoming a little bit more skeptical about things.
Really?
Yeah. And now you're not that way anymore. Like you have seriously been able to rethink these kinds of things and pull yourself out of it. But it's like how we were just talking about how worry compounds on itself. I've seen that. I mean, I've seen it happen to me. I'm sure you've seen it happen to me. I've seen it happen to you. Like whenever that wreck happened, like it kind of started compounding on itself because you would think, I really don't want this to happen. We even talked about this specifically. He said, like, I really don't want this to happen. What was it? The universe doesn't hear don'ts or something like that.
Yes, I was reading a book called
I think that's
The Secret. It's about manifestation and things like that.
I think that's what it was, is whenever you're reading that book, it kind of almost, and I'm not saying it's a bad book or anything, it's like it compounded on your worry. It was like you realized, oh my gosh, I said something and it's almost like I manifested it. And because of that, now I'm going to worry because you were like, okay, now if I think, I really don't want my left blinker to just randomly go out and somebody hit me. Well, you're going to be driving down the road and your left blinker is going to go out and somebody's going to hit you and you're going to think, you're going to start skepticizing, you're going to start worrying more. And it could not even be that bad. Somebody could literally come up and like in a physical sense, walk up and touch the side of your car. They hit your car.
And sometimes I feel as though, like, for example, you gave the example of like something super specific, like I don't want my left blinker to go out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's say instead of your left blinker going out, you miss the train. Well, since you were already thinking in a negative mindset, you're not going to think to yourself, oh, well, at least my left blinker didn't go out. You're going to be like, I can't believe I missed the train. That's still a bad thing.
Yep.
And then
you're going to worry.
And you're still going to worry. Even if the thing that you were worrying about didn't happen, if anything relatively negative happens, you're still going to reinforce that. And so the book that I was reading, actually, I never finished it, but it's a decently good book. It's really just about mindset. And you just raised your eyebrows like you had an epiphany, so go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of did. Have you watched Star Wars?
Most of them, yeah, I would say I've seen them all.
I just finished watching all of them like a couple weeks ago or something. The reason why I bring that up is there is a light side and a dark side of the Force.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which the Force is just what they use. It's not necessarily their power, but it's their force of life, essentially. So there's a light side and a dark side. From what I gathered by watching Star Wars and stuff like that, while the light side does typically win, the dark side's more powerful. So if you look at this as optimism versus pessimism, which I'm surprised I'm just now thinking about this, but if you look at this from those 2 points of view, optimism most of the time will win out. Unless you give in to the pessimism. Like Anakin Skywalker was Darth Vader. He was this great kid, became a Jedi, whatever, and then he
was the chosen one.
He was the chosen one to bring balance to the universe. And even though he was that, he brought balance, just not to the correct side. Or he kind of did bring balance, I guess. I guess he more tipped the scales. But whenever he joined the dark side, he became Darth Vader, and he gave into his pessimism, into thinking. And I mean, if you ever watch, whenever he actually does turn to the dark side, I don't know if you've seen that or not, but whenever he actually does physically turn to the dark side, he has lost everything. He
literally limbs.
Yes, he lost limbs. Of course, now he was already turning before he lost those limbs, but he was losing his lover, his life that he knew, his limbs. I mean, he was frustrated, and he was worrying about life and about everything. So he started worrying about all these different things, and that worry led to his own downfall, his own demise, his own leading to the dark side. So that's just kind of what I was trying to say, because I had this epiphany of like the dark side or whatever. I don't know what made me think of it, but I had this epiphany of like, oh my gosh, pessimism is the dark side. And if we give too much into our worry, we're going to be so stuck in the dark side or in the pessimism that we're not going to be able to get out unless somebody else helps us out. Because whenever Darth Vader dies in like episode, and I'm sorry,
I think it was 6.
but whenever he dies, Darth Vader saves his son, realizing what has happened and realizing that he needs to turn back over and turn back over to optimism. So at the very end, he did turn over to optimism and end with a happy life.
Yeah, he redeemed himself.
He redeemed himself, exactly. But once you get so down into that dark side, so much worry has piled on you, you can't get out of it without the help of somebody else, which is why I recommend therapy to anybody.
Yeah.
That's why a best friend is great. Like how we were talking about the other day, I have you to talk to sometimes, and you have me to talk to sometimes if we need to, even if just things that we're worrying about. You know, it's good to get some of that stuff off your chest, off your shoulders, just because, and it's not literally on my chest or my shoulders, but I'm so sorry. But it's good to get that stuff off, because if you don't, you can't get back to optimism, and you can't get back to living a normal life, you know, or your happy life, I guess. And that was a bit of a rant, but that's just kind of where I was going with it was, you know, with the dark side or whatever, you get so entrapped in it.
To add to that is that I feel as though one of the biggest reasons as to why pessimism is a lot more powerful as opposed to optimism is because
That's what I was trying to go with that too. Thank you.
pessimism is a lot more rooted in chaos and optimism is rooted in order. Or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know.
I was going to say, it might be the other way around.
It might be the other way around,
yeah.
but one way or the other, there's a battle between order and chaos going on between those two. And
Well, I mean, think about it like this. Back to the Star Wars reference. Whenever you see the dark side versus the light side, there's a lot of organization in the dark side. A lot of organization. They are
organized chaos, perhaps?
They are organized chaos. That's exactly what they are. That was perfect. Thank you.
I'm not sorry.
You shouldn't be. I am a little bit, but you know, it's like they're very organized with how they are like, okay, this is what we're gonna do to take over the galaxy, or this is what we're gonna do to get this one part of you know, this planet. This is how we're gonna take over this planet, or this is what we're gonna do to strike fear in these people. And all of their troops, dude, the stormtroopers, they all walk at the exact same pace.
Right.
And they're all in these perfect lines. Dude, they're extremely organized. But then if you look at the what's it called?
The Jedi Order.
The Jedi Order, whatever you want to call them. They're also
the Rebels.
Rebels, whatever it is you want to call them. The light side, essentially. They're a little bit less organized.
I
I
agree.
Yeah, because and on most of them, you know, you got Luke Skywalker has went over to this random planet to talk to Yoda for training.
Right.
Where's everybody else?
Right.
You know, everybody else, nobody's trying to organize a more powerful ship or anything to overtake the Death Star, to overtake, you know, what they're doing here until the battle comes to them. Like, once the battle gets to them, they're like, okay, now here's how we're going to take this out. They come up with a plan. They get a little bit more organized. But then as soon as their plan gets thrown out of whack, they don't have a plan B. They just instantly don't know what they're doing. And they just kind of ride by the seat of their pants and somehow win.
And like they're like the underdog, and they're just banking on the fact that like good wins.
But it's a little bit more unorganized though.
Yes.
Is the point I was trying to say.
Right.
So you get to your not necessarily light side, but the optimism side. It can be a little more chaotic sometimes. I really think it can. Now
That's
I will
fair.
say it can be organized to an extent as if you get to where you were going.
Right.
Then your optimism can be there. Oh, he just had an
Oh,
epiphany.
I just had an
I'm letting him go.
epiphany.
I'm letting him have it.
I am
Go.
taking the stage.
Yes.
So something about, if anyone that's listening is a Star Wars nerd, you might know something a little bit about gray Jedi, which actually live in perfect harmony between the dark and the light. And they draw from both. And it's a very interesting concept because it reminds me of an idea that I formulated a few months ago called reversion to the mean. And it's actually a mathematical term. So Austin will probably love this, but anyone that's been listening, that's just been waiting for to hear something overly philosophical, this is going to be perfect. So
Wow.
So this idea that I came up with is a lot of times people will go to both extremes in life before they come to the conclusion that the mean, or the average between the two things that you're talking about, is actually the best option. So in this case,
And it's hard to get there.
and it is hard to get there, and this is a perfect example because you've got the dark side and you've got the light side, you've got the order and you've got the chaos, and it isn't until you understand, at least in the case of these gray Jedi that live perfectly between the two, it isn't until that you understand both that you're able to take certain parts from each.
I mean,
and,
truth be
and-
told, you can't have good without having evil.
Right. And it's like yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
There is good in the evil and evil in the good.
Yeah.
And
But I mean, like you just said right there, they live in the middle.
and actually in the yin and yang, they do talk about the
middle.
slight separation between the two. And I believe it is the Taoists, the Taoist belief. Their goal is to try to live perfectly in between the two, order and chaos.
I did not know that.
And it's a very prestigious thing to achieve. And I think that's really what we're at war with in our emotional and cognitive existence, is that we're really just trying to take all this chaos and we're trying to find order. But if you can't have one without the other and vice versa, then you have to incorporate both of them. And I feel as though, like what we were talking about, if you are continually guided by past experiences and you're afraid to do things, you're going to be less likely to allow any pessimism or chaos or whatever it may be into your life, regardless of the fact that it might lead you to where you want to go, because you have a predisposition to be afraid and scared and pessimistic of certain things. Yet I feel like it might just take that leap of faith in order to reach the harmony that you're looking for.
It's easier said than done.
It very much so is.
It's easier said to stay optimistic than to actually stay optimistic. Because I will tell people all the time, oh, it'll be okay. You're doing fine. You'll get through this. Everything will be okay. Just look at the bright side. Be optimistic about it. You're going to get through this. Everything's going to be fine. Just don't worry about it too much. Be happy. There's a song, Don't Worry, Be Happy. But that's so much easier said than done. And I really believe that, because I will tell people that all the time. I will tell people, don't worry too much about it. Be optimistic about it. And then I myself won't be.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You yourself are always the exception for some reason. Like you, the individual.
Yep. And I'm not doing it on purpose.
Right.
I just do it. And then I'm like, why can't I practice what I preach?
Right.
Why can I not practice what I preach? And I just, sometimes you just can't, because I feel like a lot of people are that way. I've had a lot of people tell me before, like, oh, it'll be okay. Like, you'll get through this. Like, just look at the bright side, be optimistic, whatever. And I'm like, okay, maybe you're right. And then I look at them and they're keeping themselves down a lot. And I'm like,
I do that exact thing.
yeah. I wasn't even talking about you, but
I think we all do it.
I think that's exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah. I think everybody does it to some extent. Everybody. And it's like we were saying earlier, like being pessimistic is easier. And it's not that people don't want to put in the work to be optimistic. It's that sometimes pessimism will catch you by surprise. Pessimism will.
It traps you.
Exactly. It traps you. It just out of nowhere. You can be having a good day and get home. Nothing will have happened and you just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
You just feel down. And it's not that you're tired or anything. And I do this frequently. I don't feel tired. I don't feel anything. I'm just, for zero reason at all, I just feel sad. Now, sometimes it can be the kind of music I'm listening to. Sometimes it can, because I mean, music can affect the way you think and stuff like that. And that's a
Very
whole
much
different
so.
topic for a new day. But that's just, it just kind of happens sometimes. Or this has happened to me multiple times over the past year, even just, okay, this month. It has happened a couple of times, and this happens to me frequently. I'll be having a great day. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, this is one of the best days of my life. And then out of nowhere, one thing, and it takes one small thing. It's not even something like drastic. Like I'm not going to go into detail of what drastic could be because it can be drastic, but it doesn't have to be anything drastic. It can be one tiny detail that you just so happen to randomly notice.
It's like
it's
a
not
domino
even,
effect.
Yeah, it's not even something that you're looking for. It just happens. And then domino effect was the perfect way to describe it because as soon as it happens, you're like,
it all comes tumbling down.
yes, it's all just downhill from there. It's all just, oh my gosh, whether I just saw that or whether I just heard that or whether I just felt that, whatever. Why did that happen? And then the more you think about it, it's like this happened,
Then
and then
you
this
get-
happened, and
then
this
you
happened.
get stuck
and
into
then you get
the-
stuck in it, and you get
Yep.
stuck in your pessimism,
Yep.
and you get stuck there, and it's hard to get back out of it. Now, I will say, as of late, about the past month and a half or so, I've been able to get out of it a lot easier. Now, past 4 or 5 months, I've been able to get out of it. It's just been, it takes a couple of minutes, and then I can get out of it pretty easily. Every once in a while, I'll fail it, and I'll be, down for however long. But past about month and a half or so, maybe a little bit longer than that, I've been able to, and a lot of this is actually because of you, I've been able to realize what's going on because me and you have been having more conversations about this kind of stuff and how to get out of it. And because of that, I've been able to get out of it a little bit more. I don't know. That's just kind of my hot take on it. But yeah,
And as someone,
just kind of ruin your day.
right? Yeah. As someone who, you didn't ruin my day, by the way, if that's what you thought I was saying. Man. You always make my days better.
Well, I try. I'm so sorry.
As someone who, does have periods of pessimism, I feel like I should just give a little bit of insight as to some things that I do personally. And if you think of anything, you can add things that you do just to kind of get yourself out of there.
Yeah.
First of all, be aware of your emotions and your thoughts because sometimes you aren't even thinking about it. You're just sad and that's all you care about. You're not really thinking about the fact that you're sad. You're just feeling sad and you're not recognizing, hey.
Once you realize it can, and what was it? The first step to growth is realizing that you have a problem.
Yeah, so maybe the first step to escaping your pessimism is to realize that you're actually being pessimistic or that you're upset or sad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is, and these all kind of go hand in hand, but drinking enough water, eating right, getting enough sleep, and I think one of the biggest ones, two of the biggest ones for me, what I would say is prayer.
Yeah.
And more of conversational prayer, not ritualistic, repetitive prayer.
That's been something that's helped me a lot too.
Yeah.
I agree.
And being intentional with your prayer, going into it with the intention of, okay, I need guidance, I need wisdom, and whatever you believe in, ask for that guidance, ask for that wisdom, ask for that healing, and for that, clear vision to be able to get through the problems that you're facing. And another big one that I think has really helped me as of late is different types of meditation. And so there are a lot of types of meditation. There is Christian meditation where you kind of, you do a devotional, you just read the Bible and, take your reading wherever you feel God is leading you. And, you learn the lesson being portrayed and you use that as your guide throughout the day and you just meditate upon those words. There's also nature meditation, which is something that I really like that I can't really do when it's cold outside because of the weather and all that. But you just kind of go out and you find a calming place and you just take in all the energy of nature and that kind of thing. And then your typical meditation where I'll do a guided meditation or I will listen to binaural music. And I think that's really cool. I'll just put in my AirPods and just listen to this atmospheric sound and just allow myself to clear my thoughts and just kind of let thoughts pass and not really dwell on anything and there's no judgment involved. And I've actually had some very nice visualizations while I meditate. There have been times where I've seen things, and actually the other day I was meditating right after I woke up and I saw a version of myself. And I think this actually goes great with the podcast because it's all about forgiving yourself. And that's what this meditation was. I was meditating and I saw this old version of myself. Think like Dumbledore, like old guy with a cane, gray long hair, that kind of thing. And I knew it was me. And I'm like looking at this version of myself, and he like points behind me, and I turn around, and there is just this array of me's standing there. And I started to realize that all of these versions of me were iterations of one-off versions of myself that had existed for a day. So, for example, the existence that I have within this 24-hour period or whatever period when I wake up and go to sleep, that would be one version of me. And then so on and so on. Over years, you'd live thousands of days. Well, there were like thousands of me, and each one represented a day that I had lived. And some of them had positive outlooks on life because the day that they lived had been good. Some of them had pessimistic views on life because the day that they got to experience was bad, and some of them were in between, and so on. The one thing that they all had in common at the end of it was that I realized that I was the one that got to experience them all. And they acknowledged me as like, not like the supreme version of myself, but more or less kind of the supreme version of myself, where as they were locked in and they could only experience one day of existence, I get to experience them all, which means at one point I was them. And so they felt that connection with me, and they all huddled around me and hugged me at once. And I started to cry during my meditation because it wasn't even something that I was attempting to manipulate and make that kind of experience happen. I was just letting my mind go where it wanted to go. And that's what happened. And it was an absolutely amazing experience. And so what I learned from that meditation, just this meditation alone, is that I owe it to myself and to the past and future versions of myself to give myself the best day possible, because it's not just my experience. I have an influence on those around me. I owe it to my Creator, to God, to make the most of the life that He's given to me. And as I said, if you view it from the perspective of there are versions of yourself that only existed one day at a time, you don't want to ruin their one day of existence by making it terrible for them, because then that's going to shape their view. And so maybe that's what we do just over longer periods of time. We take, the last 6 months of our life and think that the entire continuation of our future life is going to be just as bad as the last 6 months have been, or so on. And even when you do have positive times, you think that, you're afraid to think that it's going to last as opposed to enjoying it. And so instead of enjoying it, you just worry about when the times are going to end as opposed to actually being in that moment. Anyway, meditation and all those other things I listed are very great things to just become more aware of yourself. And I think that self-awareness, really, to just sum it all up, when you are self-aware, you want to take care of yourself. You want to get enough sleep. You want to eat right. You want to take care of your mental state and meditate and pray and do all those things. So I really just think when it comes to the battle between order and chaos and optimism and pessimism, really just being in the moment and being aware of yourself is really one of the best things that you can do. So.
Yeah. And I do kind of want to say, I mean, you're right. You want to know, and this kind of goes back on what we were saying earlier. You want to be aware of your feelings. Like if you're like upset, sad, happy, mad, whether you're any of those, you need to realize what's going on. You need to understand, and you need to learn from it. So I, for one, like if I'm sad or something, I will be like, okay. Now sometimes I'll sit in self-pity and think about it for a few minutes, but then I'll stop and I'll be like, okay, why am I sad? Not I'm sad. Why am I sad?
Trace your steps.
Yes, I trace my steps. What started this? Okay, so it's about this right now, but what was it about earlier? What started this? And it's like how you're talking about the domino effect. I trace back the dominoes to their origin. And once I find the origin, I'm like, okay, why is that so bad? Now, if I have an actual genuine reason for it, I'll sit and think about it for a little bit longer. But if I don't, I just kind of, forget about it, move on. Right. And that's a lot, easier said than done. And I will admit to that, because there are some times I can't do that. And there are sometimes I understand, people can't, like, not everybody can just do that. It's a difficult thing. You don't want to wallow in it, though, because you can understand that you, like we were saying earlier, the first step to growth is realizing there's a problem, or realizing that you have a problem. So the first step to optimism is realizing there's pessimism or something like that. So, you want to realize that it's there. You want to understand what it is, but you don't want to ponder on it for too long. Otherwise, it can take over.
it takes an active effort to keep that
Oh
balance.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It really does. And Niall talked about, different things that he does sometimes to help with it. And there's different ways you can cope with it and stuff like that too. I personally, I'm a musician. I play guitar. And
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, one thing I love to do is if I'm feeling sad or something. I mean, I love to play my guitar in general, but if I'm feeling sad, I will grab my guitar, I'll start playing. That's actually how I've written some of my music. The first song that I released was written because of that kind of night. I was feeling sad and I grabbed my guitar and I just started messing around. Actually, I had already had the chord progression written. I just wrote the lyrics because I started listening to how it sounded and just started writing something I was feeling and things that were happening to me. So, I felt better after it. And here's another thing too, that like to a lot of musicians, I would recommend that if you're not feeling well, like if you're feeling sad or upset even, play your instrument. However, I have to put mine down after a little bit because if I don't, I will start associating it with that feeling.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So if I don't put it down and I'm sad and I stay sad while I'm playing it, if I'm like crying while playing guitar and I keep doing it and I sit there for however long and just let all of it out, and by the time I put it up, if I'm still sad, I'm going to start subconsciously, I'm going to keep associating it with that feeling. And I don't want to do that because it'll ruin that instrument for me. It'll ruin that hobby that I have. So people who have hobbies who like to take out their frustration or sadness or whatever with those hobbies, like music or basketball or whatever the case may be, it's best done in moderation. Because if it's not done in moderation, you're going to overdo it and you can get burnout on the things you like.
Yes, you can.
So if you get burnt out on your passion, then what?
Right.
Then you're more stuck than you were before. I would say, and I really do recommend, if you're a musician and you're listening to this, whether it be piano, guitar, violin, bass, whatever it is you play, sometimes it's best just to play that and just get it out of your system, not to overdo it.
I think that applies to anyone that has a passion or a hobby, whether you're an artist.
Absolutely. And I was just saying it because I am a musician.
Right,
I feel like I can somewhat relate to other people like that more. But I mean, you're right. And continue, please. I'm so sorry.
No worries. I forgive you. I think that's the first time any of us have been forgiven on the podcast.
I think it is too.
Monumental moment. Something that I really just wanted to touch on really quickly is something that you said is that when you have some of these dark times and you channel that through your music, it made me think about how there's this idea called the butterfly effect that we've talked about before. And the idea behind it is that if you changed any part of history, literally like the strands of hair on someone's head or anything, or like even the original story is that basically these people went back in time and someone stepped on a butterfly, like way back in the past. They went back to the time of dinosaurs and accidentally stepped on a butterfly. And then they went back to present day and everything was all messed up. Things had all changed. And
similar version of the domino effect.
Yeah, kind of like the domino effect. Yeah. And so it just reminded me of how, you can turn your deepest, darkest moments into some of the most beautiful productions of your existence. If you hadn't gone through those times that would have turned into that music, then some of that music would have never existed. But the time that you and I alone have spent because of some of the music that you've written has been very well spent time. And literally, the podcast itself was born because of
those things.
It was born because of those things. And I had some own things that had happened to me personally in my personal life that will probably get talked about at some point in a little bit more detail, but that it was a dark time and it was like the darkest time of my life.
Yep.
And I'm still kind of on the tail end of that, but
I was there for it.
Yeah, you were right there with me the whole time.
It was an interesting time, but lots of
forgiveness,
sorriness, and what I was going to say is epiphanies.
A lot of epiphanies, yeah. I guess that really is a great way to showcase how, your pessimism and the way that you react to your pessimism, if you do it correctly, can actually push you into your optimism.
Yep.
And so I think that's really great. I think
it really is, and that's kind of another thing too. And I want to say one more thing, and then we'll kind of end here. But holding on for the ride is another part of it. And the way I wanted to kind of describe this is think of a roller coaster. Life is a roller coaster. So I want to think of it like this. You start on the roller coaster, nothing's too bad. You're starting out in life, nothing's too bad. as you go through life, there's ups, downs, loops, turns. There's all kinds of things that you're not expecting. Almost imagine riding a roller coaster blindfolded, and then you've got it pretty much down.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Blindfolded and with headphones on or earmuffs on, so you can't see or hear. We're not going to talk about smelling and tasting. That's a completely irrelevant thing. You're on a roller coaster. What are you smelling and tasting? Anyway, let's say you're doing that. Imagine that that's what life is like. It's like you're on a weird roller coaster that you've never been on before. You're blindfolded and you can't hear, but holding on for it, you get through it. And by the end of it, you get off, you're safe, and you're happy you made it. And that's kind of what I'm talking about is I'm on a higher point of it right now. But at the same time, that I was in a lower one, not too long ago. And I've been up and down and up and down. I've had random turns and loops and twists and turns, all these different random things that will change my life. But as long as I'm holding on, I'll get to the next point. And that next point might be another turn. That next point might be another low. It might be another high. It could be anything. But so long as I'm holding onto the ride, that's kind of what matters because I will get to the next point.
It's about the experience.
It's about the experience.
Amen.
Yeah, that was very well said. I guess that's about all we got.
Yeah, I'm just going to give everyone a few reminders and then we're going to close out. I just want to say once again, as always, thank you guys for your continued support. Feel free to send us a message on any of our social media accounts. We are on Instagram at We're So Sorry Podcast. We're on Twitter at We're So Sorry Pod, P-O-D instead of podcast. It wouldn't let me take that long of a username. But we are on YouTube as the We're So Sorry Podcast. We are on Spotify. Don't forget to subscribe.
Podcast,
yeah, don't forget to subscribe on those platforms and leave us a review as well. Just like in last week's episode, if you so choose, feel free to go on any of our social media platforms and leave a comment on something specifically tied to this video and just leave a comment that says, I'm so sorry. And in the future, if we call back reference to this or just anytime you feel like doing so, you can go back to your comment and reply to yourself and forgive yourself. You can say that you still are working on whatever
or
thing.
You're still sorry.
You're still sorry, whatever you need to do.
It's like a time capsule.
It is like a time. It's like a time capsule, and it's like you're your own therapist through time almost. You're forgiving yourself just like Austin and I are forgiving ourselves.
That's another thing we're kind of into a little bit too, is a lot of self-help. Now, you do, in some cases, need help from other people. I personally need help from other people, but at the same time, there are some instances where I need to be able to help myself.
Yes.
So, and that's kind of what this is in a way.
Yeah. So anyway, like we said, just go ahead and leave a comment on any of our social media pages where it's possible and just say, I'm so sorry. And then anytime you feel like it, or if we call back to it, go back and say whatever you need to say back to yourself. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm Niall.
I'm Austin.
And we're so sorry.